shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, welcome everybody to Tuesday's edition of End of the Age. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries, and I really thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be talking in just a minute about the recent confirmation of Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education and the awesome potential that could have for our country and the education system of our country. But before we do, I've got to tell you something awesome that happened to me. This would have been back the latter part of 2015. I don't know if I've ever told everybody this, but right now, you know, we're on the drive to subscribe all of our lawmakers and the movers and shakers in the United States to our magazine, Endtime magazine. And Irvin's been talking about it on the radio, and people will call in and subscribe. It's $29 for 2 years, and for the last several years, we've subscribed to everybody, all of the governors, senators, everybody, to the President of the United States, the Vice President, Secretary of State, all the cabinet, to our Endtime magazine. And we've been sending it to them. And we've got a lot of response back. And I know a lot of people would like to say, well, hey, who have you heard from? You know, have you heard back from any senators, this, that, and the other? Well, we know that we may have helped steer maybe some of the different things with the Real ID Act and a lot of different things from the way that we've seen people on interviews, and they've almost quoted word for word out of our Endtime magazine. And so Irvin and we all talked and said, wow, that person, it sounded like they just had been reading Endtime magazine, especially recently. Irvin wrote a big article on globalism. We heard an interview with somebody, and the response that the lady gave in the interview was almost word for word out of the article that Irvin had written. So we know that we're getting a lot of good response from this effort to subscribe the lawmakers to Endtime magazine. But I wanted to tell you something interesting before I get off into Betsy DeVos today and the subject. Something neat that happened to me. I wrote an article in Endtime magazine in the September-October 2015 edition. And everyone had subscribed. We went through this effort. Everyone had subscribed, all of the lawmakers and different things, to our Endtime magazine. And we just started sending it to them. And it's really a neat effort. I mean, think about it. You've got you along with us. We're sowing seeds of truth into these people that are making decisions for this country. So they need to have truth sown to them. And a lot of times we can't go talk to them. And so it's great to send them something they can grab a hold of and read. And we know that a lot of them are reading it. So I wrote an article, and it was about the Pope's agenda, the global agenda, a call for a world government. And it was when he had written his encyclical that was focused on global warming, which leads to climate change, and saying that the solution to that was we needed a world government to oversee everything. A global political authority to oversee the global warming, climate change, and to try to help stymie that. And we sent this is one of the magazines that we sent to the lawmakers. And if you can't see me, if you're listening to me on the radio, you just have to go to endtime.com and watch it. I'm kind of giving a little presentation here. For those of you who are watching online, you'll get to see it. But this is the magazine, The Pope's Global Agenda, a Call for a World Government. Well, I sent that out. And we send them out. These magazines go all over the world. But about, I'm going to say 2 or 3 months after we sent it out, it was a huge thing going on at that time, because in the latter part of that year, latter part of 2015, is when the Paris Climate Agreement was signed. You had the Sustainable Development Goals in September of 2015. I think it was in December, they signed the Paris Climate Agreement. Well, the Pope Francis had been over here to speak that year in the United States, and they were kind of setting up for and promoting this Paris Climate Agreement that would be signed by all the nations of the world. Well, a couple, 2 or 3 months after we sent the magazines out, I got an official U.S. Envelope from the official. It's an official U.S. Senate envelope, and it was addressed to Dave Robbins, Endtime Ministries. And when they brought it to me, I thought, oh man, what did I say? I'm going to have to go testify before a Senate committee, and I don't want anything to do with none of that mess. But I opened it up, and there was a copy of U.S. Senator James Inhofe's book, The Greatest Hoax. And I'm very familiar with this book. I had already read it, written articles off of it, and I'd published Senator James Inhofe's, one of his speeches in our magazine, stating that global warming, which leads to climate change, which they say is human-induced, is a hoax. We all know it's a hoax, but it's propaganda by the United Nations to redistribute the wealth of the world. And so we talk about that all the time here at Endtime Ministries. Well, I wrote the book, I wrote the magazine article stating that the Pope, his entire encyclical that year was devoted to global warming, which leads to climate change, calling for a world government. And we know that that's the end goal of all of it. But U.S. Senator James Inhofe sent me this book, a signed copy of it, as a result of reading Endtime magazine. And he said to my friend Dave Robbins, bravo, glad you had the courage to tell the truth. Thanks to people like you and me, we are winning. Keep up the good work. Your friend, James Inhofe. And so I thought that was really special, and it was really a testament to everybody out there who helped us subscribe to the senators, the congressmen, the governors, all of these magazines will go to Donald Trump, and they'll go to Mike Pence. They have already been subscribed. Somebody's already called in and subscribed them. It's also going to go to Megyn Kelly, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly, Sarah Palin. I mean, anybody who's a mover and shaker in the United States, they're going to get an Endtime magazine. And it will also go to Betsy DeVos, who was recently confirmed as the next education secretary. And so it's kind of neat. You all can be involved in this effort with us. For one subscription for 2 years, it's $29. I mean, we basically are covering our cost. And it can go to the governor of your state. The states that have already been taken care of, all of their leaders, or the governors, is Alaska, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, and Texas. And so any other state that I didn't mention, we still need. There's 650 total subscriptions to cover all of this. We've did 112 so far, so about 17%. So if you want to call in and help us with the Lawmakers effort, it's $29 for a 2-year subscription. And really, you talk about the information, the impact that it's having. We're writing on issues such as global government, the mark of the beast, and especially in the years just ahead, it's very, very important that all of these movers and shakers, these lawmakers, that they understand really what's coming according to the prophecies of the Bible. And we're really hoping to turn the Titanic, and I believe that we are in many aspects, because the Bible says the United States is not mentioned in the world governing body in the end. So if you want to help us out with the Lawmaker campaign, we still have several hundred that we need to do. It's $29 for 2 years. Call in, subscribe. The governor, the senator, take care of your whole state. It might cost you $100 or $200, but man, what an impact you can have. A lot of people won't have a platform to get on the radio, television. You might never get to talk to your senator or a congressman or the governor. But imagine you being responsible for sending them an Endtime magazine. What a great effort on your part to help your state out and to help the United States as a whole. So very, very, very important. And I've written articles on school choice and homeschooling and different things. We have in this magazine coming out. It's perfectly timed. Irvin wrote a great article on school choice, and Betsy DeVos will get one of these. And so we want to make sure at least somebody will subscribe her because she's got to read that article. But so I want to get into my program, but don't forget the Lawmaker. You can go to endtime.com. You can call in here to one of the our order takers here, and they can help you out with everything. And let's get this taken care of. We've already got 17% of it done. We've got 112 out of 650. So very, very, very important effort. And believe me, just if nothing alone, I got this book from Senator James Inhofe letting me know these people are reading these articles. I promise you, they're not making paper airplanes out of this stuff. They're reading it, and we are having an effect. It's very, very, very important. So, obviously, most of you know by now, today, Betsy DeVos was confirmed as the next Education Secretary. Mike Pence, his historic tie-breaking vote, made the way for Betsy DeVos, and she's now been confirmed as the next Education Secretary. So let's discuss why this could potentially be a very, very good thing for America. So on the campaign trail, President-elect Donald Trump made big promises about getting rid of Common Core, which is basically governmental standards, the same standard for every student, no matter how, if they have how they learn, whatever. It's all the states across the board. Same thing. Robots, Common Core, for the common good of everyone. He stated during his campaign trail, we're going to end Common Core, and we're going to have education. We're going to have an education is going to be an absolute priority. So upon being nominated Secretary of the Department of Education, Betsy DeVos made clear her stance against the national education standards of Common Core, and she stated, I am not a supporter, period, of Common Core. Well, let's talk about the ramifications. What is the potential awesome, wonderful good that could come out of this? Let's talk about school choice to begin with. Could school choice save America? Because that's what Betsy DeVos is for school choice, Donald Trump is for school choice, and it is a wonderful idea. So let's talk about it. Think about educating your children, but don't tell them where they came from, why they're here, and where they're going. Imagine walking around in a fog. I've never been taught. Where'd I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? I'm going to give you an education, but I'm not going to tell you about any of that. Well, this is the dilemma that public educators find themselves really facing today. So what are the results of that? Well, the students attack teachers in a hallway. These are our public schools. Armed guards patrol the hallways now. Drugs are rampant in schools. There's free condom distribution to students 6th grade and above. Test scores have declined steadily since 1963. The United States used to be right up there at the top. Not anymore. America lags behind economically now because the generation several decades ago, I graduated high school in 1986. I'm 48 years old. So even back before I was born, the test scores started to decline in our public schools. And the list goes on and on. So you say, well, we're giving a kid an education, but we're not telling them where they came from, why they're here, where they're going. Well, everyone knows there's something very wrong with America's public schools. The question is, what's gone wrong? And how can we correct it? Well, of course, President Trump actually proposed school choice on his campaign trail. During his campaign, President Trump envisioned a plan called Choice. It calls for every student to be given an education voucher, which can then be used at the public, private, or parochial school of their choice. Imagine being able to choose where your student goes to school. So since the amount of the voucher would equal what is already being spent by the government per child, this program wouldn't require any additional funding beyond what is now being spent. This plan would do 3 things. It would create a free market style competition among schools, which is a very good thing. The liberal The liberals and the liberal media would say, oh, that's a bad thing. Schools don't get better as a result of that. No, that's true. That's not true. When there's no competition, that's when everything stays the same. But when you get competition, then you've got to up the ante a little bit. Right now, very little competition. There are homeschoolers here, but not necessarily for a lot of people that can't afford to put their children in a homeschool. They're forced to send them to a public school, which is not always the best solution. This would make inferior schools improve, obviously, or face extinction. So the poor, as well as the rich, would enjoy the privilege of attending private schools if they so desired. This is huge. We could really affect America by giving our children, because they're the next generation. They're going to be the business owners and the church leaders and the movers and shakers in the next several generations. So we've got to pour into them while they're young, and that's their school years. So they need to be going to the right school. Remember, imagine going to a public school, K through 12, and never being told where you come from, what's your origin, why you're here, and where you're going. Now I'm talking about the correct answers, not the Big Bang Theory and an amoeba climbed up on a beach and developed lungs and all this mess. I'm not talking about that propaganda. I'm talking about the truth, creation. That's what I'm talking about teaching. They don't get that in schools today. So imagine sending your child to a school where they would start off with prayer and devotions to Jesus Christ every day. Imagine that. Would we turn America around? You absolutely better believe we would. Your children would learn how to pray. But right now, that's not going to happen in public schools. And so imagine what we could do for America. Imagine the ramifications of the new Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. She's wanting to head down this direction. And what a great... Now, liberals, obviously, they've been attacking her for weeks and say, oh, this is horrible, because they're trying to deconstruct America. We're trying to build an awesome America, getting back to godly principles where we once were. So there is the potential for this is awesome. And of course, you can tell that I'm all for it. It would also allow all Americans the freedom to choose a religious education for their students. Remember, imagine if you could send your child to a school where they would pray, start out in the morning saying a prayer every morning. It would be awesome. Well, presently those who attend religious schools are severely penalized financially. They're taxed to support public schools, and then they must also pay tuition for their private schools. Now, this discriminates especially against the poor. Proponents of school choice believe it's time parents were free to choose the school that their children could attend. It would be awesome for everybody across the board. This approach will create the competition climate that presently stimulates excellence in our private and parochial schools. So imagine, if right now, not really a competition with the public schools, but imagine if there started to be competition and they started to lose some of their enrollment, then they say, well, hold on, we can't continue right now there's a big education union and a teachers union, and they're saying, hey, we'll just go along at this right here. You can't do that. If there starts to be competition in the marketplace, that's when everything gets better. It's not when there's no competition. It's kind of like Obamacare right now. So here's let's look at maybe the pros and cons, or perceived propaganda pros and cons. Opponents of choice say that they fear the quality of education will degenerate without government control. However, students attending private schools have consistently outscored their public school counterparts. This would obviously not be a problem, but a solution. Some fear that freedom to choose would result in the closing of many public schools. Well, it is true that some of the non-performing schools may close due to no enrollment, and they shouldn't close. We have learned from communism that what happens when ill-managed and incompetent businesses are not allowed to fail. Yet this is exactly the American way. Education has been run for years. It performs badly, give it more money. That's not going to solve anything. There needs to be competition in the marketplace. So you say, well, hold on a minute, Dave. What about separation of church and state? Well, opponents of choice argue that allowing education vouchers for attendance at religious schools constitutes subsidizing religion. This would only be true if larger vouchers were given to religious schools than to non-religious schools. If this were done, government would be paying for the religious training as well as the basic education. If religious and non-religious schools receive the same amount per student, then the religious portion of the parochial school instruction must be funded by the parents or the church. So the Constitution does not instruct government to be against religion. It provides for the freedom of religion. So shouldn't this include freedom to choose a religious education? To really teach a child, where did you really come from? What is your purpose here on life? And where are you going? Think about it. If you don't have that right there, where'd we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Where are we going to spend eternity? You would go through life thinking, well, hey, I'm here to make money, buy another car, buy a bigger boat, a bigger house, and then I'm going to die and leave it to my kids. That's not where we came from. That's not why we're here, and that's not where we're going. So that's why a religious education, very, very, very critical to getting America back to being a godly nation. This wouldn't cost the taxpayers additional funds. It would not impose religious instruction on those who don't want it, because remember, you're choosing which school your child goes to, and it only provides freedom of choice to those who believe that education without instruction of spiritual values is no education at all. So, choice is what Donald Trump has talked about, is very vital to America's future. Many Americans have regarded the course of our nation with great concern. I'm concerned. Homes are degenerating. I'm not talking about physical homes. I'm talking about the family. Homes are degenerating around us. I talk to people all the time going through divorces. What can we do to help them? The drug epidemic, the drug problem seems insurmountable. I've talked to people, several people, down from committing suicide right in here sitting at my desk. And so society, many homes are degenerating. The AIDS, alcoholism, suicides, crime, it all seems to be unsolvable. Does an answer to these perplexing problems even exist? Absolutely. I've seen people delivered from every one of those things I just talked about. Marriages saved, delivered from drugs, alcohol, all of these immoral lifestyles, you name it. I've seen people delivered from all of that. I can give you specific testimonies of people close to me who have been delivered from all of those circumstances. And there is absolutely an answer. The Bible states, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. It's Proverbs 14:34. Our founding fathers felt compelled to place "In God We Trust" on our money. They did that for a very specific reason. The U.S. Congress, at President Eisenhower's urging, added "under God" to our Pledge of Allegiance. Why? They wanted us to be in subjection to God and recognizing we are under God. If we ever get out from under that and think, I can control everything, everything will start going south. Mankind, the human existence, mankind cannot run themselves. The Bible says it is not in man that walks to direct his own footsteps. We have to be led by God. And if you don't have any education of God, you're really going to be in a world of hurt in the next several years when times get really turbulent. So were these men, the founders of this nation, our forefathers, were these men babbling religious idiots when they did this stuff? Placed under God in our Pledge of Allegiance? Or did they understand that our system of government will not work without God? Our form of government is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. In other words, it is basically self-government. And when the character of people becomes eroded by immorality and addictions, self-control is destroyed. When people are ruled by their passions, government will be forced to restrain them by law. As more and more laws are passed, more and more freedoms are eroded. If people would act right, there wouldn't have to be so many laws. Now, we in America are experiencing this exact scenario right now. Some of this responsibility must be placed at the feet of public education. It's no coincidence that the moral decline in America parallels exactly with the banishment of prayer and God from our schools by the Supreme Court in the early 60s. Since it has been mandated that religious teachings be banned from public schools, the character necessary to preserve our nation, it can't possibly be provided by them. That's why if choice were enacted, it would enable religious schools to offer the quality of education they have demonstrated that they can provide. And at the same time, the values that have made America great and are so vital to her future would be reinforced. The passage of the choice concept may be the one thing that could reverse the downward trend of America. So it's very, very important that we understand, really we're at a very, an epic turning point here in the United States. And there's a lot of things that are happening, but I see the appointment of, now I don't see Betsy DeVos as a savior. That's not what we're saying. But she could have the effect of turning our education system. She's now the Secretary of Education. She was just confirmed earlier today, turning it back towards God and giving you a chance. Imagine having a chance to choose for your child to get a religious education, which is an awesome education. It's really teaching them what they need to know, along with reading, writing, and arithmetic. It would be awesome. That's the potential that we have in this administration.
From Here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like, how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-ENDTIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
Most people have dreamed of someday walking on the ground where Jesus walked over 2,000 years ago. You don't want to wait any longer. Make this the year for your life-changing experience. Judy and I would like to invite you to join us for our 2017 Spring Endtime Prophecy Tour. This is a 14-day trip to Israel and Rome. Please join us to experience the greatest place on earth, the Promised Land, with an added bonus, Rome, Italy. Start making your plans right now and join us April 30th through May 13th of 2017. We're going to have a wonderful time.
Call now to reserve your place today at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
You know, everyone, I'm actually excited about Betsy DeVos getting confirmed today to be the Secretary of Education. Do you realize, look at what just happened. She was going through the Senate hearings and all the different things, and they were attacking her to death. Now, what I've seen over the past several years is that when somebody decent that is going to kind of turn the tide against the establishment and against all these liberals, when somebody decent comes along, man, they will attack them like a pack of wolves. So now I'm not saying every time that this is the case, but you almost know who to vote for when they're getting attacked by the liberal media like crazy. Not every time, but we still got to do our research and know what the facts are and everything. But I'm just saying, I can almost sit back and watch who the liberal and the media is attacking and everything and say, well, that's probably my guy or my lady right there. And so I sit back and I watch them attack Betsy DeVos like a pack of wild dogs. And I sat there and watched her, and I'm doing research, and I want to know what she believes and where is she going to take us. And the potential. Now, could she get in there and do something off the wall? Sure, she could. I'm not placing all of my hope and dreams in her. That's in Jesus Christ. But the potential for this is great. And so I'm excited. I mean, we're excited around here about her confirmation. There's a chance to do really great things for our educational system and for our young people. And so I'm very thankful to God for that. I believe God's hand is in this. And everything that's going on. We're moving back. We're pulling away from the establishment and all these old cronies that have run things for years, and they've got their hands in everything, and they've got their ideas, and it's humanistic solutions, and they're running things, and all this Common Core and all that stuff. That stuff is all junk. I want to get away from that stuff, and I want us to get back towards godly values. Don't want liberal values. I want godly values. There's a huge difference there. And so that's where we want to be headed, because I want to live in a nation that is God-centered around Jesus Christ. That's where I want to live. And so very, very, very important, the times that are happening, things that are happening right now. So you say, well, man, you've talked about school choice and all this other stuff. And yeah, our schools, there's a lot of bad things happening because they're government run and everything. But you say, well, what can we do? Well, here's the answer. If you see the value of an education that can restore Judeo-Christian values to America, here's some of the things we can do. Number one, pray. You say, well, I don't know how to pray. Prayer is not some seance you're going to have where you're going to light candles and go sit in the dark. That's not prayer. Prayer is simply, it's real easy. It's a conversation between you and the God that created you, that created the universe, that created everything. The next breath and the next heartbeat that you have comes from your Creator. And so all you're going to do is have a conversation with Him. Just like you'd have a conversation with your wife, your husband, you go out on a date, you have a conversation. Hey, what'd you do today? I worked all day, I had a good day, yada, yada, whatever. It's the same way with God. Lord, I love you. I thank you for dying for me on Calvary. And I've got a problem. And worship, the Bible says, enter into His gates with thanksgiving, enter into His courts with praise. Praise Him. He created you. Your next heartbeat comes from God. It's not some big, some muscle that's, tells itself to beat, blah, blah, blah. God makes all of that happen. And so you're going to have a conversation with Him. Over the course of your conversation, you can say, Lord, you see the situation of our nation. I'm asking you to help us. Guide us back to where we would be under subjection to you. And I'm telling you what, if we do this, this country will start, you talk about a country turning around, if everybody was serving God, all of these riots would stop. You want to know how to solve the riots? Let's turn our nation back to God. All this terrorism and all that mess, that stuff would end if we would all point ourselves back to God. I know I got to get back on my message here, but I could almost preach to y'all because we've got to get back to praying to God. Without prayer, it's not going to look too hot for you in the turbulent times that are coming just ahead. Okay. Number one, what can we do? Pray. Number two, call and write your senators and congressmen, urging them to support choice, including religious schools. Very, very, very important, because there may come a time in just the near future, if what Betsy DeVos is wanting to do, you may have a choice to send your child to one of those religious schools, which would be awesome. It could change your home. Think about it. And number three, promote choice to your friends, your fellow workers, relatives, local leaders, and your fellow church members. Promote school choice. That's a good thing. We want that. We want you to be able, if you want, to pull your kid out of a public school and put them in a religious or some parochial school, some private school. Get them a better education. Do all you can. This is going to be your choice. You say, well, I don't have the funds. You could possibly get a voucher, an amount of money from the government that says, send your child wherever you want. That's the potential here. So it's very, very, very important. We're trying to steer America back to God. And getting a hold of our educational system is one of the most important ways to do that. You say, well, getting a hold of our educational system, how's that going to help? Look at what happened to this nation when they took prayer and God out of our schools. We took a nosedive. We went down morally. And look at all the junk that we've got in here now because they took prayer and God out of our schools. Well, imagine what could happen if we put prayer and God back into our schools. That nosedive could suddenly start to ascend, to go back up. And we could get back to where we want to be even better as a godly Judeo-Christian country. That's what we want. So our choice is very clear. Either secular humanism or Judeo-Christian values will capture the minds of this nation. We can't just sit back and say, well, I hope one happens. I hope we get back to Christian values, but I'm not going to participate. Nope, that's not how it works. Everybody's got to participate. Look at what happened in the election. We all come out, all of the evangelicals come out, and we swung the vote this year because we got tired of the way things were going. We're wanting to head back towards God. The election wasn't won on let's make America great again. The election was really run on evangelicals coming out en masse saying we want to make America godly again. That's what really won the election in my eyes. And basically, if you look at going back to Judeo-Christian values in the minds of this nation, one leads to ever-increasing government, which is obviously ever-increasing government would be going back to public schools and different things. Those are ran by the institution. However, the resulting loss of freedom, ever-increasing in government, results in the loss of freedom. It goes hand in hand. But going back to Judeo-Christian values, on the other hand, leads to spiritual and moral renewal and the preserving of America. We must save our schools in order to save our country. It's very, very, very important. Talk to your friends and family and all your sphere of influence about school choice. It's very important. My kids have graduated from high school now, but I'll have grandkids coming up in this, and I want to make sure that they have a choice. So it's very, very, very important. You say, well, I don't have any kids. We're still trying to steer our country in the right direction. So we've got to pour into our children. And so it's very important. This is our chance right now. God is with us. And so we need to support this. Now, let's talk about Betsy DeVos for a second. How will Betsy DeVos, as the Education Secretary, how can she help this effort? It's very important. So, this comes from Fox News. Trump picks the charter school. Now remember, I just talked about charter schools. Trump picks a charter school advocate in Betsy DeVos for Education Secretary. So, who's Betsy DeVos? DeVos from Michigan is a longtime advocate for charter schools and school vouchers. So this is our new Education Secretary. I mean, I'm doing cartwheels, you just can't see it. It's very important. I mean, this is awesome. She currently leads the advocacy group, American Federation for Children, and sits on the board of the Jeb Bush-led Foundation for Excellence in Education. Now, under her leadership, we will reform, this is what Trump said, under her leadership, we will reform the U.S. education system and break the bureaucracy that is holding our children back so that we can deliver world-class education and school choice to all families. Now, this is what Trump envisions. Now, that's very important. The President of the United States is looking to go away from all public schools, not shut them all down, because some of them may rise to the occasion once they get a little competition. But Trump is saying, we want to give people a choice where they're going to send their kids to school. And then when asked about DeVos's support, when asked for her support for the Common Core standards, which is government instituted standards for children across the board, Trump spokesman Jason Miller said, because people were wondering, well, I thought Betsy DeVos had supported Common Core originally. And then Trump's spokesman Jason Miller came out and said, the president-elect has been consistent and very clear in his opposition to Common Core. Anybody joining the administration is signing on to the president-elect's platform and his vision for moving America forward. So that kind of relieved my mind, because I did a little research and I thought, hold on a minute. Betsy DeVos had supported some institutions that were pro-Common Core. And I thought, no, whoa. I want to make sure before I get on the radio what I'm talking about here. However, Jason Miller, Trump's spokesman, said that, listen, Trump is absolutely against Common Core, and anybody that joins his team is going to be against Common Core. And I'm going to show you how Betsy DeVos is against that as well here in just a second. And then, this comes from WorldNet Daily. Trump's education pick blasts Common Core. Now, this is very important. President-elect at that time, Donald Trump, selected billionaire philanthropist Betsy DeVos, a relatively unknown figure on the national scene, to head the U.S. Department of Education. She was just confirmed a few hours ago. Betsy DeVos is a brilliant and passionate education advocate that Trump recently said in a press release. Under her leadership, we will reform the U.S. education system, break the bureaucracy that is holding our children back so that we can deliver world-class education and school choice to all families. DeVos said to that, I'm honored to accept this responsibility to work with President-elect, now President, on his vision to make America education great again. The status quo in education is not acceptable. Together, we can work to make transformational change that ensures every student in America has the opportunity to fulfill his or her highest potential. Now, DeVos, obviously, she's a relatively safe pick for conservatives who favor school choice programs such as vouchers that would enable low-income families to send their children to a private school or of their choice. However, now that's very important, because when I sent my kids to school, we really sacrificed to send them to a Christian school and give them a Christian education. It's very, very hard, and I made pretty good money. And so I know what a sacrifice it can be. If you don't make very good money, you think, well, public school is my only option. We might be turning away from that in the near future, and in doing so, turning America back to God through our educational system. It's a very, very important time for America right now.
Have you ever thought, I want to make a difference in the political world by sharing what I've learned about Bible prophecy from Endtime Ministries? But where do I begin? How can I make an impact? You can make a difference today. Endtime Ministries is ready to share the truth with all of our lawmakers on how current news relates to Bible prophecy and how it's all happening right now in our lifetime. We are asking each of our readers, listeners, and partners to donate $29 or more to sponsor a 2-year magazine subscription per lawmaker or leader in this country. With your help, we can spread the end-time message all across America. Partner with us today by donating just $29 or more, and that will go towards this world-changing cause. Our country will be glad you did. Call today at 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com and donate to our Lawmakers magazine subscription. You can be a part of America's change today.
So we're talking about Betsy DeVos. And an important point to remember is that she is a polarizing figure for those who support the traditional public school system. She's saying, hey, everybody, I'm coming in and I'm going to give you some competition because I'm for choice. I'm for giving people a choice of how they're going to educate their kids. So here are some things that you need to know about Betsy DeVos, which is now our Secretary of Education, just confirmed this morning. Number one, She does not support Common Core, period. That was one of the big things for me, because when I looked back, did my research, I thought, no, whoa, hold on a minute. She has actually supported some of the institutions that were for Common Core. And I got scratching my head thinking, now some of this stuff don't add up. And I'm not going to go on the radio and tell everybody that this could potentially be a good thing if under the surface it's not. But according to her, she made a statement on her website, she does not support Common Core, period. That was her words. Under accepting the position of Education Secretary, DeVos issued a statement clarifying that she is not a supporter of Common Core. She keeps using the word period. In other words, absolutely, I am not a supporter of Common Core. Trump's disdain for the national standards or Common Core was perhaps the most talked about education policy issue on the campaign trail. Trump was continually saying, Common Core is horrible, we're going to do away with it, it's a travesty. Well, DeVos's opinion on the issue was previously unclear, in my mind as well, until I really did my research and found out what the truth was. DeVos currently serves as the head of the Foundation for Excellence in Education, which was started by former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who Trump criticized for defending the national standards. In recent years, DeVos has been quiet on the issue of Common Core, but upon accepting the position in the Trump administration, she changed that, writing, I do support high standards, strong accountability, and local control. And then when governors such as John Engler, Mike Huckabee, and Mike Pence were driving the conversation on voluntary high standards driven by local voices, she said it all made sense. Have organizations that I have been part of supported Common Core? Of course they have. But that is not my position, she says. Sometimes it's not just students who need to do their homework. So she's kind of coming back a little bit saying, look, do your homework. I did support some of them, but that's not my position. That's not why I supported them. However, along the way, Common Core turned into a federalized boondoggle. It went way out where she thought it would have went originally. Above all, Betsy DeVos states, I believe every child, no matter their zip code or their parents' jobs, deserves access to a quality education. Is that good news for you out there listening to me? That there may be a potential for you that even though you may not be able to afford it, and I've been there. I mean, I'm right in the same boat with you where it was hard for me to choose any school my kid wanted to go to. Imagine if you got a check that said, hey, I want my kid to go to this school and they get to go and get a wonderful education. Now, you understand why I'm just a little bit excited here. Because you could choose to give your child a quality Christian education, which they test out very highly, I might add. My kids went to a Christian school, both of them. My daughter went to go into college and skipped all kinds of courses. She tested out of them. Didn't even have to take a lot of the prerequisite courses. She tested way above that. And so it's very, very, very important. Your child might have the opportunity to do the same just here in the very near future. A quality Christian education. Number 2 about Betsy DeVos, she strongly supports school vouchers. DeVos believes that every child should have the opportunity for a top-notch education, regardless of their family's financial background. For that reason, she and her husband, now up to this point, it's been public school. That's been your option. But Betsy DeVos is saying, we got to change all this. And she's been advocating this for years and years. And so for that reason, she and her husband advocated a ballot proposal back in 2000 that would have amended the Michigan Constitution to create a school voucher program that allows taxpayer funds to follow students to private schools. After hitting a roadblock, she and her husband formed a political action committee to support voucher-friendly candidates on the national level. It's what a lot of they've been pouring money into. And according to Chalkbeat, the group counted a 121 to 60 win-loss record. So they've done a lot of good up to this point. Well, now she's on a national level and she can really do some good. And I'm hoping and praying that she does. If she does everything that she's talked about, It should be awesome. So the potential is there. Now, obviously, you got to wait till they get in there and see what they do, because it's a little different saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, and then getting in there and making it happen. Donald Trump is finding that out as well. But if she can get some of this stuff passed, it's going to be awesome for our children here in America. So since then, she's played a major role in expanding the number of school choice programs available to students across the country, not just in Michigan. And number 3, Betsy DeVos also supports charter schools. Very important. DeVos and her husband have been actively involved in promoting charter schools for over 2 decades and helped to pass Michigan's first charter school law in the state. Charter schools are basically publicly funded, and they're open to all students, but able to operate with more autonomy than traditional public schools. In other words, they might be able to talk about God rather than saying, oh, I can't talk about that here. So these are the things we're looking for, some competition with the public schools. Now, obviously, the public schools, am I saying all the teachers in a public school is bad? No, absolutely not. But what I'm saying is the overall curriculum and different things that they're taught aren't the best. And some of the situations that go on in a public school probably aren't the best. And I think y'all know a lot of what I'm talking about, handing out condoms and things like that. It's horrible, some of the things they're doing. And of course, from some of Betsy DeVos's positions that she's taken and issues that she's ridden over the years, there's currently 275 charter schools in Michigan. And that's according to the American Federation for Children, some of which have been criticized for their lack of accountability and government oversight. I know that you would agree with me, that's a good thing. Some blame the DeVos family for contributing to the lack of oversight. The lack of government oversight, would we not all want that? I'm absolutely for that. I want to be a grown-up. I want to be a Christian, godly man. I want to be able to govern myself with God as my leader, and I want government out of my life. The DeVos family, they've been criticized for the lack of government oversight over schools of things they've pushed. This lady is the Secretary of Education now. The DeVos influence is one reason that Michigan's charter sector is among the least regulated in the country. So it's very, very, very important. Number 4, she's an outsider in Washington. From that right there, I would have almost installed her in office. But she's an insider in Michigan. So she's done great things in Michigan, but she's an outsider in Washington. And there's a potential for a lot of good there. Now, although dealing with the inner workings of Congress will be new to DeVos, she can learn that. Everybody has been their first time there. A lot of people said, oh, she don't have any experience. The only way sometimes that you can get and learn something new is just dive off into it. Anybody who's started a new business, done something big where you had to take a risk, you started from scratch and you figured it out and made it work. Well, this lady will have a team of people around her that are devoted. She'll make sure they're devoted to making these things happen, and just watch. If she relies on God, it's going to turn out great. So she's well familiar with the political system. Having served as chair of the Michigan Republican Party, her husband, Dick DeVos, was elected to the State Board of Education in 1990 and ran for governor of Michigan in 2006, losing to Democrat Jennifer Granholm. And 5, she supports homeschooling, which is huge. Homeschooling is a way that you can get out from under the public school and teach your kids good, godly principles. You say, man, Dave, you keep going back to the godly thing. What about all this other? They can get a great education, but the fact of the matter is an education, how can you teach science without talking about God and creation? In my mind, I don't know how that's possible. You have to teach where everything began. I mean, what are you going to do? Start from just a few years ago and start teaching science? I don't know how that's even possible. Homeschooling, most homeschooling curriculum is godly, Christian-centered. So this lady, Betsy DeVos, supports homeschooling. It's awesome. Do you remember, a couple years ago, where the homeschooling family from Germany, which it's illegal to homeschool in Germany, they wanted to come over here to America, but the Obama administration was trying to get them, to deport them? Think about that. All they wanted to do is come here to be able to homeschool their kids, and the previous administration was trying to deport them. They finally allowed them to stay. I can't remember their name. Well, now the Secretary of Education just confirmed today supports homeschooling. It's very, very important for children in school age now. In 2013 interview with the Philanthropy Roundtable, DeVos voiced her support for homeschooling. She said, homeschooling represents another perfectly valid educational option. We've seen more and more people opt for homeschooling, including urban areas. What you're seeing is parents who are fed up with the lack of power to do anything about where their kids are assigned to go to school. To the extent that homeschooling puts parents back in charge of their kids' education and more power back to them as well. It's very, very important. You want to be in charge of your kids. You want to be careful of what they watch, what they see, where they go. You can't just let your kids run rampant and think, well, they're turned out to be this great, awesome, wonderful, productive person in society. You wonder why there's killings and all this other mess. These kids are being fed that junk on television. And then you wonder why they act like they do. And we need to get back to good, godly, basic principles in the home, going to church. We got to turn this Titanic around, and we're going to do it. But the education of our children is one of the best ways to start. Their minds are moldable during them years. And so they need a good, godly education, because a lot of times you get them up to 18, 19, 20 years old and then say, okay, now let me give you this good moral foundational base. And they're saying, hey, I've already formed my opinions up to this point. And it's sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's almost too late. And so education, their educational years, very, very, very important. And then obviously, Betsy DeVos funds a variety of nonprofits. Very important. So, you talk about school choice, getting back to America back to godly values. Education is a great place to start. Now, is Betsy DeVos the next savior of the world? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that with her confirmation today, there is a lot of potential for a lot of good things to happen, and spread it around about school choice and vouchers and things like that. We want to support our lawmakers, and we want to get that stuff passed, because we could put America back on a godly foundation during this administration.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.